Hello everyone, and welcome to the second video on the Jungian psychological analysis of the manga Goodnight Punpun. Today we will be covering chapters 11 to 20, as I finally got the time to read it. I've seen a lot of manga review channels, but never one that focuses on the psychological messages, symbolism, and the psychological significance within manga. I believe this is an important thing to talk about, as it is the core reason why manga such as Goodnight Punpun and animes become popular and loved by many individuals. Firstly, I was astonished at the amount of detail into the psychological significance of human development placed on each panel of the chapters through the dialogue and images. You can interpret these 10 chapters in two different ways. One within a framework of the exploration of childhood life, and the second being the influence that life has on childhood experiences. Both are relevant and unique. For the purpose of this video, I'll be focusing on a combination of the two, and more specifically, the idea of how childhood experiences influence the human psyche. Chapter 11 starts off with Masumi Seki, who has a conversation with his father, who he sees as a useless individual, with no job and no motivation to provide for his family. You see him closing off his shop and almost in a degenerative state. Seki sees his father not as a hero, but as a pathetic individual. Because of this, he innately forms an immediate shadow within himself, which is never be a lazy and useless person. The chapter then presents Shimizu and his relationship with his mother, which seems to be kind at face value, but you can tell that he wants appreciation and acceptance for who he is as a person as well as his creativity. The relationship between Shimizu and Seki is the beginning of the psychological theme within these 10 chapters, which is the understanding of the relationship with your parents and how it shapes who you are as a person, your psyche, and reality itself. Now let's set some frameworks and outline some concepts so that it can help us better interpret these 10 chapters and the character development within these chapters. It is important to note that childhood experiences hold tremendous importance in psychological development. During this formative periods, individuals develop their sense of self, establish relationships, and lay the foundation for their future psychological well-being. Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist, recognized the critical role parents play in this process, as they are the primary caregivers and the first significant figures individuals encounter in their lives. The nature of parental relationships and the experiences individuals have with their parents can shape their ego development, the formation of their persona, and the integration or repression of aspects of their shadow. For example, a positive and nurturing relationship with parents can contribute to the development of a strong and healthy ego, as well as a positive and adaptive persona. On the other hand, negative or traumatic experiences with parents can lead to a repression and distortion of certain aspects of the self, potentially amplifying the influence of the shadow and disturbing the formation of a cohesive and authentic identity. It is important in this sense to identify some of the reasons and aspects of how parents influence the development of children and how we can interpret them. Carl Jung intertwined the following in order to understand human development and the human psyche. The first fundamental concept in Jungian psychology is the ego, which represents an individual's conscious identity and sense of self. The ego is responsible for perceiving and interacting with the external world, and it develops through the process of socialization and personal experience. Jung viewed the ego as just one part of a larger, more complex system within your psyche. Another important concept in Jungian theory is the persona. The persona refers to the social mask that individuals wear to present themselves to the world. It is the image or role that individuals adopt in order to fit into society and meet its expectations. The persona is influenced by cultural and societal norms and can vary across different social contexts. Jung also introduced the concept of the shadow, which represents the unconscious and often hidden aspects of an individual's personality. The shadow encompasses repressed desires, emotions, and instincts that are deemed unacceptable or incompatible with one's self-image. The shadow can influence behavior and relationships, and Jung believed that integrating and acknowledging the shadow is essential for personal growth and psychological wholeness. After you have a basic understanding of these concepts, you begin to view each panel of the manga as you read, the relationships between the characters, and the story itself in a much different manner. Take Seki as an example. His ego and self-identity are formed through the fear of becoming like his father, who is a useless individual and does not support his family. His ego begs to see himself as a competent individual who is a leader and has value within his friend group. But the lack of awareness of his shadow does not let him integrate and understand his ego to its fullest extent. Rather, it grabs onto the persona in an unhealthy manner and leads him to interpret the world through the lens of his persona rather than his true self. We can see this clearly. Seki is a young child in elementary school, but smokes cigarettes, which is a part of his persona as a grown-up, competent individual, or a wise and logical person who knows better than his friends. You can see this in chapter 11, when he takes his anger on his father out on Shimizu and smacks him for mentioning a poop god, something that is childish and something that, if accepted, will destroy his persona of a mature and competent individual. Seki also sees himself as a leader within his group of friends, making the final decision to go look for the miso factory and attempt to find the dead body and the hidden money. He believes this as a childish idea, but at the same time is eager to go on the adventure. But this eagerness is in conflict with his persona of a grown individual who is responsible and logical, unlike his father. Therefore, he masks every comment about going to find the money as a stupid idea, but something he will entertain for the sake of his friends, which in hindsight is a responsible thing to do. The author lays out this psychological commonality within many individuals in modern times extremely well through the exploration of Seki as a character. Often we all have personality traits, personas, and egos that have developed to stray away from our parents. It is a biological inclination, a natural and necessary step towards psychological wholeness. A person must become an individual rather than a clone of their parent. This is a necessity no matter the situation, whether you may have had great parents or one like Seki who has no regard for their child. Throughout these 10 chapters, the author defines this psychological struggle, but also gives the reader the solution for overcoming this psychological trap. The solution is one that is not directly defined, but rather symbolically told. Again, let's take the relationship between Seki and his father, as well as the intertwined dimensions of the relationship between Seki and his friend Shimizu. Seki doesn't particularly like Shimizu, and often bullies him for expressing his thoughts, creativity, and to be frank, anything at all. But why is that? This is because from a psychological sense, Shimizu's playfulness and imaginative behavior exemplifies the lack of logical coherence that is necessary for life. And this lack of reason, or logic, such as being able to use the Kamehameha, represents Seki's father. His psyche has adapted to see Shimizu's cluelessness as a representation of everything that is wrong with the world and everything that is wrong with his father. In this sense, because of his father and the relationship he has with him, Seki has developed a shadow, which is the part of himself that is also a useless person. And to combat this, he has developed a persona of a matured individual who exemplifies behaviors and actions that are beyond his age. He shuns away his childhood life, the ability to be imaginative and playful. But this all comes crashing down as Punpun, along with Seki, Aiko, Shimizu, Harumin, and Komatsu go on a journey that they describe as a test of courage. This is symbolic in the individuation process defined by Jung. The process of individuation, or understanding your psyche in its wholeness, is through a continuous journey that you must go on. Punpun, Seki, and all of his friends go on this journey, which is a perfect symbolic exemplification of what Joseph Campbell would define as the hero's journey. An individual is approached by a call to adventure. They refuse the call, face tests, become closer with allies, and face enemies. And at the end of the journey, a reward is given. This is an archetypical process of development that the psyche goes through. It is universal and present in all human beings. You exemplify this in your everyday life through every goal you set, and this process is also a cure to confronting the inadequacies and confusion that you face in your psyche. For example, through this journey of finding the hidden money in the abandoned miso factory, Seki is able to better understand himself. He faces the trials and tribulations of the journey as they spot an unidentified man, a stranger, the ghost they were all scared of, and run for their life. Seki runs, leaving behind Punpun and Aiko, having no thought about saving his friends. But Shimizu, the person he found to be childish and annoying, shows moral courage by saving Seki by opening a door within the abandoned miso factory and letting Seki escape. After this, he decides to go back and search for Punpun and Aiko, sacrificing himself. Seki now realizes and understands his inadequacies and evolves an immense development in his psyche, which is the understanding that the aspects of his father he hated the most is who he is at that moment, a coward and a useless individual. He even states this: "I'm totally useless. After all I said, I'm the most worthless of all of them." This transformation is profound, and through his journey, he discovers the differentiation between the persona he presents to the outer world and his friends, and his ego, the conceptualization of who he is as a person. Jung would describe this as a step towards psychological wholeness, or towards the self that is present in all individuals. You must dive into an adventure, and one that is rough, creates negative feelings, and consists of constant battles to understand the way in which your psyche has been shaped by the social world around you, and specifically by your parents. Often within psychotherapeutic relationships, it is the process of finding, understanding, and articulating such past experiences and their hidden meanings that creates change in the therapeutic setting. Like I mentioned in my past videos, these 10 chapters have a variety of psychological themes that are hidden within their story, drawings, and dialogue, but it would be impossible to cover all of them in this video. Another fascinating and important aspect of these 10 chapters is when Punpun has a flashback into his life and his psyche identifies the most important memories he possesses. Each one has a story that it tells and a direction it gives for psychological development and wholeness. I will be creating a new video on my Patreon diving in depth into the specifics of Punpun's flashback. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining. I hope you can view this manga in a different light, and I'm sure that understanding it from a psychological aspect helps you connect more with your favorite characters, as well as helps you find solutions to some of your own problems. As I continue to read this manga, I'll be making more psychological analysis of every 10 chapters. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to my channel. And as always, take care everyone.